Hello and good day, everyone. Thank you for showing up today. My name is Farah Azlin, and I am a clinical psychologist from Naluri. Today, we will be uncovering a topic that you might have thought about or possibly trying to make sense of: adverse childhood experiences and trauma. A big topic which is impossible to be discussed within our limited time here today. But fret not. For today, I will share with you what does it mean by adverse childhood adversity or experiences, trauma, and how we can address them using trauma-informed care approach. Before we proceed, I hope to set a kind disclaimer here that there will be mentions of trauma and abuse and mental illnesses in today's sharing. And this is not meant for you to diagnose yourself, but it is meant as an awareness for all of us here on the topic. Please check with a mental health professional if you suspect that you might have trauma symptoms or need to work on your trauma through psychotherapy. To start, I want to share with you a famous experiment in the field of psychology called the Little Albert experiment. So this experiment was conducted in 1920s by researchers Watson and Reynolds, trying to prove the theory of fear conditioning. What happened was, whenever Albert tried to touch a white rat, that behavior was paired with sudden fear-arousing noise made by striking a steel bar behind him. And it was observed afterwards, instead of trying to touch the white rat out of curiosity, little Albert withdrew his hand from the rat, indicating the presence of fear, phobia, and trauma. And not just that, this learned response of Albert seemed to generalize not just to white rats, but also to cotton balls, a Santa Claus mask, a brown bunny, and a black fur coat. So what makes me share this controversial experiment with you? Though there are definitely a lot of questionable methods used in the experiment in which modern ethical standards would not allow such a methodology, but what can we learn from little Albert and how does that relate to trauma? First thing first, let's look into what trauma means. Trauma results from an event, series or event, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and their physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. This can also be observed amongst children, where it occurs when children are exposed to events or situations that overwhelm them and also their ability to cope with what they have experienced. The Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs study, is one of the largest investigations of the impact of childhood abuse and neglect on later life in terms of health and well-being. What do adverse childhood experiences mean? According to the CDC, adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood from birth until the age of 17 years old, which also includes aspects of the child's environment that can undermine their sense of safety, stability, and also bonding. A bit of ACEs 101. ACEs can be observed based on these three types. 1. Abuse, which can be physical abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. Second, on neglect, whether it's physical neglect or emotional neglect. And third, on household dysfunctions, which includes mental illnesses in the family, substance abuse within the family, loss of a parent to death or abandonment by parental divorce, witnessing domestic violence, especially against the mother, and last but not least, incarceration of any family members for a crime. As ACEs have been studied for decades and are still being researched on by the experts, it is worth noting the profound impact of ACEs on health outcomes later in life. The original ACE study and decades of research have linked ACEs to an increased risk of developing chronic diseases and also behavioral challenges. This includes obesity, autoimmune diseases, depression, and alcoholism. The greater the number of ACEs, the greater the risk for negative outcomes. Individuals with multiple ACEs may be more likely to perform poorly in school, be unemployed, and develop high-risk health behaviors such as excessive smoking and also drug use. Multiple ACEs over time, especially without adequate adult support, can affect our nervous system, our endocrine system, and immune system, and have lasting effects on our attention, behavior, decision-making, and response to stress throughout a lifetime. We can also observe the impact of trauma from the aspect of our cognitive, such as our inability to process thoughts and make good judgment, our memory, distressing dreams, flashbacks. And from the emotional aspect, we would feel shame, guilt, anger, fear, and pain. And from the physical aspect, we can see the effects on our muscles, our joints, our digestion, and also our metabolism, and also in terms of our sleep, where we would experience sleep disturbance, lowered immune system, lethargic, lack of energy. And socially, we can observe this by the behavior of aggression and also inappropriate reactions, unhealthy or poor relationship with loved ones, family, and friends. And we also can notice people who are traumatized may withdraw themselves from places or people that may trigger their traumatic memory. Now, I understand that this sounds scary and overwhelming, maybe a bit boring, but that's the bitter truth that was found by trauma experts. And today we are here to learn about this so we can take mindful preventative actions for our future. There's a famous book called The Body Keeps the Score, written by a trauma expert, Bessel van der Kolk. So he mentioned, contrary to popular belief, trauma is actually extremely common. We all have jobs, life events, unpleasant situations, causing us daily stress. But when our body continues to relieve that stress for days, weeks, months, or even years, that stress actually changes our brain and creating trauma inside our mind, and that trauma can eventually manifest in our physical body. As you can see, trauma isn't what happens to us, but how we respond to the traumatic situation. Something that is traumatic to one person maybe it's not a big deal to the next. Whether something becomes traumatic or not has a great deal to do with who's around us while we are experiencing this event. Were we alone and scared? Or were we comforted by friends and family? The problem with trauma is that it starts when something happened to us, but that's not where it stops. It changes our brain. Once our brain changes and we're in constant fight or flight mode, it can be hard to stay focused, feel joy, or experience pleasure until this trauma is healed. Luckily, modern psychological practices are developing innovative ways to heal from trauma that actually work. Trauma-informed care is an approach that focuses on the 4 R's: realize, recognize, response, and resist. Realize means realizing the widespread impact of trauma and understanding the potential paths for recovery, like what we're doing today. Recognizing would mean recognizing signs and symptoms of trauma in us and others who are involved in this system that we're at, which we have covered here just slightly. I would require a much longer time to actually go deeper into the symptoms of trauma, but as a start, this is actually good enough. The third one is on respond. Respond, on the other hand, indicates learning the techniques on how to manage any reaction from our trauma. And last but not least, resist means taking actions to prevent re-traumatization or generational trauma to happen in the future. And for today, I hope to share with all of you a bit of each of these R so that we can take away something to practice after. Understanding the trauma-informed care approach will require different levels of training. But today, just like I said, I hope to focus on what you can do as part of your coping styles in handling any traumatic responses in your life. Again, working on our trauma will take some time, but I hope today's sharing can at least be a stepping stone for you to get proper help with a mental health practitioner. First, being grounded in the here and now is very important for us to manage the fight or flight responses that may be caused by trauma impact. Some of the tools that you can try out are 1. Practice deep breathing exercises. As simple as inhaling through our nostrils for 4 seconds, hold our breath for 4 seconds, and exhale through our mouth for 6 seconds. And then what we can do is repeat the whole process again and again for at least 2 minutes or when you feel a lot calmer. Trust me, if you practice this regularly, okay, remember here, the key word is regularly, you can actually see how deep breathing is actually a life-saving tool that you can use whenever and wherever. Number 2, another grounding tool that you can practice is by using our 5 senses. When things get a bit too much, focus on 5 things that you can see. It could be the clouds, the sky, whatever things in front of you. Okay, so 5 things that you can see. And then focus on the 4 things that you can touch or feel. It could be the clothes that you are wearing, or maybe your feet, it's touching the ground or the floor. How does the floor feels like? And then 3 things that you can hear. It can be that you hear the sound of the fan, the sound of the aircon, the sound of the wind. So what are the 3 things that you can hear? 2 things that you can smell. It can be any smell that can help you to feel a lot calmer. Some people, they love the smell, citrusy smell. Some people, they prefer to use essential oil. So anything, 2 things that you can smell. And lastly, 1 thing that you can taste. So it can be anything that can trigger your taste bud. If the steps are a bit too much for you, you can just choose any of the 5 senses that you find more comfort with. Like for example, I myself, I love to see the sky whenever I'm feeling stressed out. So I just focus on my senses, my sense of sight to help me to feel a lot calmer. So choose which senses that you are most comfortable with to do this practice. Another tool that I want to share with you today is called the butterfly hug, where you can actually use to ground yourself and bring down the intense emotions whenever you need it. So how to do the butterfly hug? We can do it together now. You can do it by crossing your arms in front of your chest. You can put them either on your shoulder or on the side of your arms, which can look like you are hugging yourself. Then what you do is you start tapping your hands by alternating the taps, one at a time, slowly in each one. You can do so by either closing your eyes, you can just open your eyes with a gentle gaze. Another tip that you can do with this technique is while you are tapping, you can breathe slowly. until you feel a lot calmer. You can also add some affirmative words to yourself, like by saying, I am safe, I am grounded, I am loved. These sensations will pass. And when you notice the intensity goes down, you can continue on doing what you need to do for the rest of the day. Last but not least, as I said earlier, working on our trauma may take time. Reaching out to a mental health practitioner that can provide trauma-focused therapy can help you tremendously. If you are unsure how to find for the right therapist or a therapist that can help you with your trauma, during your session with your therapist, you can ask them if they are trained in trauma-focused therapy. I understand that it might get overwhelming the first meetup. Your feelings are valid here. Your therapist will support you with empathy and won't judge you with the circumstances that you are facing. You can actually gain a lot of benefits from attending a therapy session, especially as we move towards the last art of the trauma-informed care approach, which is to resist and prevent any generational trauma to repeat in our next coming generations. To end the sharing today, I would like to bring back the story of little Albert to your attention. Though not many know what actually happened to little Albert after the experiment, but an interesting insight has caught my attention. A scholar who reviewed the study and the theory of conditioning shared that it is not known whether little Albert subsequently experienced fear around rats and furry objects, or if he actually survived into adulthood at all, or if he was healthy and well-adjusted. So these are something that even we don't know. Still, it is likely that after the experiment was over, little Albert encountered other rats, other furry objects in the absence of a loud noise. Eventually, he should have learned that such objects no longer predicted a frightening clang, and his fear response should have declined. And this process is known as fear extinction learning. So what can we take away from little Albert's experiment is that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And sometimes what we need is a little nudge for us to move towards it. I hope today's session has been a good nudge for you. Thank you so much for your attention. Hopefully this nudge will help you to observe and to be more aware in case you might have unresolved trauma in yourself. If you do, it's okay. We all have circumstances in our life that we have gone through. Whatever it is, take your time and do not be afraid to reach out for help. Thank you for tuning in. Take care.